I'm 77 years old, and last Tuesday my daughter-in-law handed me a printed list titled House Rules in my own kitchen and told me, very calmly, that from now on I should ask before sitting in common areas. My house. My kitchen. The chair I bought in 1989 with money I earned hemming other people's curtains. And she smiled like she was doing me a favor. Hello, my dear friends. It's Grace. I've seen many things in my life, but nothing chills me like quiet disrespect wrapped in politeness. Tell me, would you accept rules in your own home? Write in the comments. My name is Margaret Hale. I don't ask for much. A cup of Darjeeling in the morning, my worn blue armchair by the window, a little Bach on the radio. Peace, that's all. When my son Daniel called 3 months ago and said he and his wife just needed a short break while their apartment underwent renovations, I said yes without hesitation. He's my only child. You don't measure love in square footage. They arrived with 6 suitcases, 2 plastic storage bins, a chrome coffee machine the size of a small spaceship, and an energy that didn't match the word temporary. His wife, Vanessa, hugged me with the kind of embrace that doesn't quite touch. Her perfume, something sharp and expensive, lingered longer than her warmth. The first week I told myself I was imagining things. The way Vanessa rearranged my spice rack by efficiency, moving my smoked paprika and sumac into labeled glass jars. The way she replaced my lace table runner with something minimalist and beige. It's cleaner, Margaret, she said. Cleaner than what? My life? Then came the chair. My blue armchair sits by the bay window, where the afternoon light pools like honey. I've read novels there, shelled peas there, even dozed off there with a shawl over my shoulders. One afternoon, I came back from my neighbor Ruth's house and found it gone. In its place stood a narrow, angular accent chair that looked like it belonged in a dentist's waiting room. Oh, Vanessa said lightly, we moved your chair to the den. It didn't match the new layout. The new layout of my living room. That night, Daniel avoided my eyes at dinner. He twirled spaghetti, gluten-free, of course, because Vanessa said wheat makes her foggy, and spoke about property values and open concepts. I asked where exactly in the den my chair was. It's fine there, Mom, he said. You don't need to sit out front all the time. We're trying to create a shared space. Shared. I have shared my body to bring him into this world. I have shared my savings to help with his college tuition. I have shared every birthday, every heartbreak. But now I needed permission to sit in my own living room? 2 days later, Vanessa placed that paper on the kitchen counter. Just so we're all comfortable, she said. It listed quiet hours, kitchen usage slots, a note that guests should be pre-approved, and at the bottom, in neat bullet points, Margaret to avoid moving items from designated zones. I read it twice. My hands did not shake. I was raised better than that. My mother survived the war with less complaint than I show when tea goes cold. But something inside me shifted, like a lock clicking into place. I see, I said. Vanessa mistook my calm for compliance. She even patted my arm. We just want harmony. Harmony does not begin with erasing someone. That evening, when I went to sit in the living room, my living room, Vanessa cleared her throat gently. Margaret, we're having friends over soon. Maybe the den would be more comfortable for you. More comfortable for me. In the room with the dusty treadmill and the flickering lamp. I looked at Daniel. He stared at his phone. So I walked to the den. I sat in my blue chair, wedged between cardboard boxes labeled winter coats and miscellaneous. I placed my hands on the worn fabric and realized something very simple. They thought I was old. Old means soft. Old means slow. Old means unaware. They forgot that old also means experienced, observant, patient. And patient people don't react. They prepare. This was the week I stopped asking for peace. This was the week I started paying attention. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, not because of noise, though there was plenty of that now, cabinets closing too hard, Vanessa's blender screaming like a distressed seagull, but because something in the air had changed. My house no longer breathed the way it used to. It felt staged, curated, managed. I put on my robe, the soft lilac one with the frayed cuffs, and walked into the kitchen at 6 sharp. Vanessa was already there, scrolling on her tablet, sipping something green and frothy from a tall glass. "Oh," she said, glancing at the clock mounted above my stove. "Margaret, breakfast time for you starts at 7. We're trying to keep the kitchen flow consistent." The kitchen flow. I looked at the paper schedule now taped to my refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a lemon. 7 to 8 a.m. Margaret. 8 to 9:30. Vanessa smoothie prep / Daniel coffee / work calls. "I've been making my tea at 6 for 40 years, I said calmly, reaching for my kettle. Vanessa stood, gently but deliberately placing her hand over it. "Let's just try to respect the system. It's temporary." Temporary had started to sound permanent. I didn't argue. I went to the pantry instead and noticed my Earl Grey tin was gone. In its place, neatly stacked quinoa, chia seeds, and something called activated buckwheat. My tin was on the top shelf behind a basket labeled legacy items. Legacy. As if I were already gone. Daniel came in 10 minutes later, hair damp from the shower, earbuds in. He kissed Vanessa on the cheek and gave me a distracted nod. "Morning, Mom." "Where's my tea?" I asked him. He pulled one earbud out. "Vanessa reorganized. It's more efficient this way." "For whom?" He sighed. "Can we not start the day like this?" Like this, as though I had lit the match. By the afternoon, they had moved more things. My porcelain figurines, 3 small swans I've had since my wedding day, were packed into a box. "Too fragile," Vanessa explained. "We don't want accidents." Accidents. I walked into the living room and saw my bookshelf half empty. My cookbooks, my handwritten notes tucked between pages of coq au vin and lemon posset recipes, were stacked on the floor. In their place stood glossy design books and a ceramic sculpture that looked like a twisted bone. Vanessa felt the room needed elevation, Daniel said, when he noticed me looking. "It's about value perception." Value perception. In a house I paid off in 2003. That evening they hosted friends. I was informed at noon via text message. Yes, text message. "Just a small gathering," Vanessa wrote. "Probably best if you keep to the den so it's not overwhelming." Overwhelming for whom? At 7, laughter filled the house. I sat in the den at first, listening. I heard someone ask, "So how long is this place yours?" Vanessa's voice, light and breezy. "Oh, we're figuring that out. It's a transitional phase." Transitional. I stood up. I walked into the living room wearing my cream cardigan and my small gold locket. Conversations faltered for half a second. Vanessa's smile tightened. "This is my mother," Daniel said quickly. "She's staying with us." Staying with us. I looked at the guests. 3 couples. Polite, curious eyes. "Actually," I said gently, "they're staying with me." Silence. A glass clinked softly on the coffee table. Vanessa laughed. Oh, Margaret has such a sense of humor. Humor. I didn't sit. There was nowhere for me to sit. My blue chair was still exiled. The new angular thing faced away from the room, decorative but unwelcoming. So I remained standing until Daniel subtly touched my elbow. "Mom," he whispered, "you're making it awkward." Awkward is when someone forgets a name at dinner. This was something else. I returned to the den on my own. I did not slam a door. I did not raise my voice. But as I passed through the hallway, I noticed something new on the small console table near the entrance. A folder. Manila. Thick. With my name printed on a white label. Margaret Hale. I didn't open it. Not yet. But I felt it. The shift had deepened. This was no longer about furniture or tea schedules. They were organizing more than a house. And I was done pretending not to see it. I waited until the house went quiet. The laughter faded around 11. Doors closed. Water ran in the upstairs bathroom. I sat in the den, hands folded over my handbag, listening the way I used to listen when Daniel had a fever as a child, counting breaths through walls. At midnight, I stepped into the hallway. The folder was still there on the console table. Margaret Hale. The paper felt heavier than it should have. I carried it back to the den and closed the door softly behind me. No trembling, no rushing, just steady hands and the low hum of the old lamp in the corner. Inside were copies, property tax statements, my mortgage payoff confirmation from 2003, bank summaries. Even a printed estimate of my home's current market value highlighted in yellow. A sticky note was attached to one page. Sign when ready. We'll handle the rest. No signature line yet, just preparation. Preparation for what? I turned the page and saw something that made my chest tighten, not with fear, but with clarity. A brochure from a senior assisted living facility. Smiling, gray-haired couples holding hands under bright artificial sunshine. The words Independent Living Transition Program circled in pen. Transition. So that was the direction of the current. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I locked my bedroom door at breakfast at my designated 7 a.m. I placed the folder neatly on the table between us. Vanessa froze first. Daniel followed. "What's this?" I asked calmly. Daniel swallowed. "Mom, we were just organizing paperwork. In case anything ever what?" Vanessa leaned forward, palms flat against the table like she was presenting a quarterly report. "Margaret, you've said yourself you're tired sometimes. We thought it might be responsible to explore options before things become stressful." "For whom?" I asked again. "For everyone," she replied smoothly. There it was again. Everyone. Daniel avoided my eyes. "It's just planning, Mom. You know, estate stuff. Protection. Protection feels different from replacement." I opened the brochure slowly and slid it toward him. "Did I ask for this?" "No, but did I?" Silence. Vanessa exhaled sharply. "This is exactly why we need structure. Emotional reactions don't help." Emotional. I have buried a husband. I have survived 2 surgeries. I have balanced 3 jobs at once. If this was emotional, then earthquakes are gentle breezes. I folded the papers back into the folder. "You went through my files." "We were helping," Daniel said weakly. "My filing cabinet was locked." Another silence. Vanessa's jaw tightened. "Margaret, when families live together, there has to be transparency." Transparency without permission is intrusion. That afternoon, I checked something else: my spare keys. They were not in the porcelain bowl near the hallway mirror where they had sat for 15 years. Instead, I found a new keypad installed on the side door leading to the garage. No one had mentioned it. "Security upgrade," Daniel explained when I asked. "What's the code?" Vanessa answered before he could. "We'll manage access. It's simpler that way." Manage access to my own home. That evening, I went into the den and pulled my blue armchair closer to the small desk in the corner. I opened my old leather-bound address book, the one Vanessa had called clutter, and ran my finger down the pages. Names I hadn't needed in years, until now. I may be 77, but I am not confused, and I am not transitioning anywhere without a fight. The next morning, I put on lipstick. Not because I was going anywhere glamorous. It was a small ritual from another era, a reminder to myself that presentation is power. Coral rose, the shade I wore the day Daniel graduated from college. If they were preparing paperwork behind my back, I would prepare too. At 9 sharp, I walked to the local bank branch 3 blocks away. I did not tell them. I did not leave a note. I simply took my handbag, the sturdy brown leather one with the brass clasp, and stepped into the cool morning air. The young man at the desk smiled politely when I gave him my name. His expression changed almost imperceptibly as he typed. "Mrs. Hale, there was an inquiry submitted regarding a home equity line of credit." "I didn't submit one," I said. "Yes, ma'am. It appears someone requested preliminary information online. It wasn't finalized. We attempted to call for confirmation but didn't reach you." Attempted to call. "My number hasn't changed in 22 years, I replied. He nodded slowly. The contact number listed was different. Different. I felt something cold settle into my spine. Not panic. Clarity. "Please place a note on my account. No inquiries, no changes, no applications without me physically present, and add a verbal password." He blinked. "Of course. I'd also like a printed copy of any recent access attempts." He hesitated only a moment before nodding again. When I walked home, the house looked the same. Pale siding, trimmed hedges. The small ceramic birdbath Daniel had made in middle school still crooked near the roses, but it no longer felt neutral. It felt like a stage set. Inside, Vanessa was in the kitchen, blending something aggressively green. "You were out," she said, checking her smartwatch. "Yes." "You didn't mention that." "I didn't realize I needed clearance." Her lips pressed thin. "We worry." "No," I said quietly. "You plan." Daniel came downstairs halfway through the conversation, sensing tension like he used to when his father and I argued about money. "What's going on?" "I visited the bank," I said evenly. Vanessa froze for half a second. Just enough. "Oh," she replied lightly. "For what?" "To ensure no one is opening lines of credit against my house." Silence. Daniel's face drained. "Mom, we were just exploring options." "It wasn't—" "Exploring requires consent." Vanessa set the blender down harder than necessary. "You're twisting this. We're trying to secure the future." "My future?" I asked. "For all of us," she said again. There it was. The word that meant them. I placed the printed bank report on the counter. The unfamiliar phone number glared up from the page. Vanessa didn't touch it. "I've placed a lock on my accounts," I continued calmly. "Any further attempts will require me in person." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "You didn't have to escalate this." "Escalate." I almost laughed. You installed a keypad without telling me, I said. You moved my documents. You contacted my bank. If anyone escalated, it wasn't me. Vanessa crossed her arms. You're being paranoid. That word. Old people and paranoia. They fit neatly together in other people's minds. Perhaps, I said softly. But paranoid people don't leave paper trails. Her eyes sharpened. The rest of the day was quiet in a way that wasn't peaceful. Doors closed gently now. Voices were lower. But I felt the shift. They understood something had changed. That evening, when I walked into the living room, the angular chair was still there, but my blue armchair had been moved again, not to the den, to the garage. I saw it through the small window in the door, my chair sitting between paint cans and a folded aluminum ladder. Exiled further. I stood there for a long moment, looking at it, and I realized this was no longer about money. This was about erasure, and I do not disappear quietly. I didn't confront them about the garage, not immediately. Instead, I opened the side door, stepped into the cool, cement-scented air, and ran my hand over the worn fabric of my blue armchair. Dust had already begun settling along the armrests. A faint smear of white paint marked one leg. Careless, as if it were just another object waiting to be discarded. I didn't drag it back inside. Not yet. I went upstairs instead. Slowly, deliberately. When I reached my bedroom, I locked the door again and sat at my small writing desk. The one Vanessa had called quaint. I opened my address book to the letter C. Carver, Helen, estate and probate attorney. Helen and I had shared lemon scones at a church fundraiser 15 years ago. Her husband passed the same year mine did. We hadn't spoken recently, but I remembered two things about her. She listened carefully, and she did not scare easily. I dialed the number. Her voice was older now, rougher, but steady. Helen, it's Margaret Hale. A pause, then warmth. Margaret, I wondered when you might call. I didn't waste words. I explained the brochure, the bank inquiry, the folder. The keypad, the quiet language of transition. I did not cry. I did not dramatize. I laid facts on the table like playing cards. When I finished, she was silent for a few seconds. Do you still hold full title to the house? She asked. Yes. Any joint ownership? Transfers? Powers of attorney? No. Good, she said simply. Then they're testing boundaries, not acting legally. Yet. I want to protect myself, I said. You will, she replied. But protection requires preparation. I'll need copies of everything. And Margaret? Yes? Stop being polite. That made me smile for the first time in days. After I hung up, I did something Vanessa would not expect. I took photographs. The garage. My chair. The new keypad. The rearranged filing cabinet. The folder. I even photographed the house rules list still taped to my refrigerator. Documentation. Quiet evidence. That afternoon, Daniel knocked on my bedroom door. We need to talk, he said. I unlocked it. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. He looked tired. Thinner, somehow. Vanessa feels like you're undermining us, he began. Undermining what? I asked. Our attempt to stabilize things. Stabilize. Daniel, I said gently, this house has been stable for decades. He paced once across the carpet. You don't see the bigger picture. Property taxes are rising. Maintenance costs. It makes sense to restructure assets now instead of later. Restructure whose assets? He hesitated. There are ways, he continued carefully, to simplify ownership, for protection, for tax efficiency. By moving me out? He flinched. That's not what I said. You printed a brochure. That was just research. And the bank inquiry? He looked away. It wasn't finalized, he muttered. No, I agreed. Because I stopped it. His jaw tightened. You're making this adversarial? No, I said quietly. You did that when you stopped asking. For a moment, I saw something flicker in his expression. Not anger, not arrogance. Fear. Of what? I wasn't sure. Vanessa's voice called from downstairs. Daniel? He stepped toward the door, then paused. We're trying to think long term. So am I replied. When he left, I sat back down at my desk and opened a small wooden box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were old documents, my will, updated after my husband passed. A notarized statement from 2010. A list of beneficiaries. Everything still intact, but not detailed enough. Helen would help with that. That evening, I made dinner. Proper dinner. Roast chicken with rosemary and thyme, buttered carrots with a pinch of nutmeg, and for myself, a small glass of sherry. I plated it beautifully. Even used the china Vanessa had deemed impractical. When they came to the table, Vanessa looked almost startled. What's the occasion? She asked. No occasion, I said calmly. Just reclaiming my kitchen. She sat stiffly. Daniel said little. Halfway through dinner, I spoke again. I will not be transitioning anywhere, I said, cutting my chicken carefully. And no financial decisions will be made about this house without my explicit, written, notarized consent. Vanessa set her fork down. Margaret, you're escalating this unnecessarily. No, I replied, meeting her eyes for the first time without softness. I'm clarifying. The room felt smaller after that. Later that night, as I passed through the hallway, I noticed the folder was gone from the console table. Good. Let them hide it. I already had what I needed. The next 2 days were quiet in a way that felt rehearsed. Vanessa stopped mentioning structure. Daniel avoided financial vocabulary altogether. The house rules sheet disappeared from the refrigerator. If someone had walked in from the outside, they might have thought everything had settled. But politeness after exposure isn't peace, it's recalculation. On Thursday morning, I found something new on the kitchen counter, a small weekly pill organizer, 7 compartments, Monday through Sunday, already filled. For you, Vanessa said lightly when she noticed me looking. Just to make things easier. I stared at the translucent plastic lids. I manage my own medication. It's just vitamins, she replied, and your blood pressure tablets. Daniel mentioned you forgot once last month. I had not forgotten. I had delayed it by an hour. I'll handle my own health, I said, pushing the organizer back toward her. She didn't argue. She simply picked it up and placed it beside the coffee machine. A visible marker. That afternoon, I noticed another change. My mail was no longer on the hallway table. It sat in a neat stack beside Vanessa's laptop. I sorted it, she said before I could ask. Junk goes straight to recycling. Open envelopes aren't junk, I replied. She gave me a small, patient smile. I was helping. Helping has become the most dangerous word in my house. That evening, I made a quiet decision. I would no longer react in real time. Instead, I would observe. After dinner, salmon this time slightly overcooked because Vanessa insists on well done for safety, I excused myself early and returned to my bedroom. I pulled out a small spiral notebook I used to track household expenses. On the first blank page, I wrote the date. Then I began listing. Keypad installed without notice. Bank inquiry using unknown number. Legal paperwork assembled without consent. Medication organizer pre-filled. Mail intercepted. Facts, not feelings. At 10:30, I heard low voices in the hallway. My door was slightly ajar. I remained still. "We have to move faster," Vanessa whispered. Daniel responded, quieter. "She went to the bank. We can't rush it now. She's suspicious. She's my mother. She's an obstacle." Obstacle. I did not move. I did not breathe differently. I let the word settle. Obstacle. Not family, not resident, not homeowner. Obstacle. Their footsteps faded down the stairs. I waited 5 full minutes before standing. Then I walked to the hallway console. The folder was back. Thicker. Inside, new documents. A draft letter addressed to a physician regarding cognitive evaluation. Notes about observed forgetfulness. Bullet points. Clinical language. They were building a narrative. And narratives, once documented, travel far. I took photographs again. Every page. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called Ruth, my neighbor of 32 years, the woman who knows how I take my tea and when my lawn was last reseeded. If anyone could speak to my decline, it would be her, and she would laugh at the suggestion. "Ruth," I said when she answered, "I may need you to remember a few things for me." She didn't ask many questions. She simply said, "Come by tomorrow." "I'll make biscotti." The house felt different after that call, not smaller, sharpened. When I returned to my bedroom, I opened the small wooden box again and added something new inside. A USB flash drive I had used years ago for family photos. Tonight, it held images of every document they had prepared. Backup. Because if they were constructing a case, I would not stand unarmed. They believe I am 77 and tired. They are correct about one thing. I am tired. But not weak, and certainly not an obstacle. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was afraid, because I was thinking. By morning, the house had settled into its now familiar performance of civility. Vanessa hummed while slicing avocado. Daniel read news headlines aloud like nothing was cracking beneath us. I watched them the way one watches weather shift. Subtle pressure changes, invisible currents. At noon, I told them I would be visiting Ruth. Vanessa offered to drive me. I declined. "I still know how to cross a street," I said evenly. Ruth's kitchen smelled like cinnamon and old wood. The biscotti were slightly overbaked, just the way she prefers them. I laid everything out for her, calmly, chronologically. The folder, the evaluation letter draft, the bank inquiry, the word obstacle. Ruth didn't interrupt. When I finished, she removed her glasses and stared at me hard. "You're sharper than I am," she said, and I balanced 3 bridge groups. "I may need a written statement," I replied. "You'll have it." By 3 o'clock, I was back home. The garage door was open. My blue armchair was no longer there. For a split second, my heart kicked hard against my ribs. Not panic, recognition. I stepped inside. The living room had been rearranged again. The angular accent chair was gone. In its place stood a larger, plush recliner, dark gray, mechanical, modern, a chair designed for someone older, someone who needed assistance rising. Vanessa stood beside it. "We thought this would be better for you," she said gently. "It has lift support." Daniel hovered nearby, avoiding my eyes. And my chair? I asked. Vanessa smiled thinly. It was worn. We donated it. Donated. Without asking. Without telling. My husband died in that chair. I sat in it the night I received his hospital call. It held 34 years of quiet evenings. You donated it, I repeated. It was time, she said. We have to move forward. Move forward. Something in me hardened. Not loudly, not explosively, just firmly. I walked to the new recliner and pressed the button. It hummed, lifting slowly forward like it was presenting me to the room. A throne of managed decline. I don't need help standing, I said. Vanessa's voice shifted slightly, losing its softness. Margaret, this resistance isn't healthy. Healthy? I asked. Daniel finally spoke. Mom, we scheduled an appointment next week. Just a consultation. Cognitive screening. To ease everyone's mind. You scheduled, I repeated. For your benefit, Vanessa added quickly. And here it is. The line crossed without permission. When decisions about your mind are made behind your back, what would you do if someone tried to measure your sanity without asking you first? Tell me below. I looked at my son. Did you tell them I agreed? I asked quietly. He hesitated. Silence is an answer. They just need to assess, Vanessa pressed. If everything is fine, wonderful. If not, we can plan appropriately. Plan. I walked past them and went to the hallway console. The folder was there again, slightly open. I removed one sheet from my handbag and placed it on top. A printed notice from my bank confirming that all financial activity required in-person authorization. Signed, stamped. Then I added another. A business card. Helen Carver, estate and probate attorney. Vanessa's expression changed. Daniel's face paled. I've also scheduled an appointment, I said calmly, to update my legal protections, including medical directives and property restrictions. You didn't tell us, Vanessa said sharply. I didn't realize I needed clearance. The words hung in the air between us. For the first time since they moved in, Vanessa dropped the polite tone entirely. This doesn't have to be a fight, she said coldly. No, I agreed. It doesn't. I walked to the front door and opened it. You will cancel that appointment, I continued evenly. And no further discussions about my cognitive state will happen without me present. Daniel looked torn, but Vanessa stepped forward instead. You're overreacting. No, I said quietly. I'm responding. Outside, the late afternoon sun lit the porch in gold. For the first time in weeks, I felt steady. They thought replacing a chair would soften me. They thought paperwork would corner me. They forgot one important thing. I built this house, and I am not finished standing in it. The house did not explode after that conversation. It narrowed. Vanessa stopped pretending to be gentle. Daniel stopped pretending not to notice. We moved around one another like diplomats from hostile countries sharing a fragile border. On Sunday, I suggested dinner. A proper one, I added. Candles, wine, no phones. Vanessa studied me for a moment. What's the occasion? I feel like cooking, I replied. Control can look like aggression, but it can also look like hospitality. I went to the market alone. I chose ingredients carefully: fresh thyme, shallots, a small wheel of pecorino, and a cut of lamb I hadn't prepared in years. I even bought saffron, the real kind in the tiny glass vial that smells faintly metallic and warm. When I returned, Vanessa was on a call in the living room. I caught only fragments as I passed. Evaluation next Thursday. Yes, she's resistant. Documentation. She saw me, and lowered her voice. That evening, I set the table with my china again. The impractical plates, linen napkins. I lit 2 slender beeswax candles and placed a small bowl of olives in the center. Daniel looked uncertain. Vanessa looked strategic. We ate slowly. I poured a modest amount of red wine into each glass. I did not overfill mine. Halfway through the meal, I leaned back slightly. "I've been thinking," I said calmly. Vanessa's posture straightened. "It would be helpful," I continued, "if we clarified expectations." "In what sense?" she asked. "In the sense that this is my property. And while I welcomed you here, that welcome had no conditions attached to my removal." Daniel shifted in his seat. "Mom, I'm not finished." Silence. "I want transparency as well," I went on. "If there are concerns about my cognition, voice them directly, now, with specifics." Vanessa met my gaze. "You've been forgetful." "Example?" "You misplaced your reading glasses last week." "They were in the garden." "You repeated a story at dinner." "I've repeated stories for 40 years." Daniel rubbed his temples. "This is uncomfortable." "Yes," I agreed. "It is." Vanessa exhaled slowly. "Margaret, you don't adapt well to change." "Change." "My husband died," I said evenly. "That was change. I survived." No one spoke for several seconds. I leaned forward slightly. "You scheduled a cognitive evaluation without my consent. That appointment will be canceled." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "You can't stop us from caring." "Care does not override autonomy." She opened her mouth to respond, but I reached into my cardigan pocket and placed something on the table. A small digital recorder, not turned on, just present. Daniel stared at it. "What is that?" "Insurance," I replied. Vanessa's composure cracked for the first time. "Are you recording us?" "Not yet." Silence again, heavier this time. "I prefer clarity," I continued calmly. "So I'll ask plainly. Are you attempting to establish grounds to declare me incompetent?" Daniel looked shocked. Vanessa did not. "That's an extreme accusation," she said coolly. "It's a precise question." Daniel looked between us. "Vanessa?" She hesitated, and in that hesitation, everything spoke. "We're trying to protect the future," she finally said. "Whose?" I asked softly. Neither answered. The candles flickered. Outside, a car passed slowly on the street. Ordinary sounds. Ordinary night. Inside, the air had changed permanently. I stood and began clearing the plates. "You are guests," I said quietly, "not guardians." Vanessa rose as well. "This isn't over." "I know," I replied. And for the first time, I saw something else in her expression. Not confidence. Calculation. The next morning, Vanessa canceled the cognitive evaluation. Not because she wanted to, because she had to. I know this because I heard her. She stood in the hallway near the staircase, voice low but sharp. "We're postponing," she said into her phone. "Yes, I understand. No, she's being difficult." Difficult. That word rolls off certain tongues so easily when control slips. I stayed in my bedroom and let her finish. I did not give her the satisfaction of knowing I had heard. Instead, I focused on the next step. Helen had called late the night before. "We move quickly," she'd said. "If they're building a case, we counterbuild one. You'll come to my office tomorrow morning. Bring identification and your original deed." So that afternoon, I retrieved the metal lockbox from the back of my closet. Vanessa had never noticed it. Inside were the deed, insurance papers, my will, and the notarized mortgage release. I placed everything neatly into my handbag. At dinner, no one mentioned appointments. No one mentioned cognition. We ate in careful quiet. Afterward, Daniel lingered while Vanessa went upstairs. "Mom," he began, voice softer than usual, "this is getting tense." "It was tense when you scheduled doctors behind my back," I replied. He looked tired. "You don't understand the pressure we're under." "Then explain it." He hesitated. "Rent went up," he finally admitted. "The renovation is taking longer." We're stretched. "So you thought securing this house would relieve that?" He didn't answer directly. He didn't need to. "You could have asked for help," I said quietly. His shoulders tightened. "It's not that simple." "It never is," I replied. The next morning, I left before either of them woke. Helen's office smelled faintly of old paper and lemon polish. She reviewed every document carefully. No rushing, no assumptions. "You're legally secure," she said at last, "but we're strengthening it." We updated my medical directive. Clear, explicit language stating no cognitive evaluations without my written consent, unless ordered by a court. We revised my will, adding clauses that prevented any property transfer under duress or informal caregiving claims. We established a trust structure that required an independent third party for any major asset decisions. "And one more thing," Helen added. "I recommend drafting a formal occupancy agreement." "For my own son?" I asked. "For anyone living under your roof." By the time I left her office, I carried a folder thicker than the one Vanessa had assembled. Documentation works both ways. When I returned home, Vanessa was waiting at the kitchen island. "You were out early," she said. "Yes." "With your lawyer?" I paused just long enough. "Yes." Daniel came down the stairs mid-conversation. "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means," I said calmly, placing my folder on the counter, "that any further attempts to interfere with my finances, medical status, or property will be addressed formally." Vanessa crossed her arms. "You're threatening us." "I'm protecting myself." Daniel ran a hand through his hair again, the same nervous habit he had at 12. "Mom, we don't want this to get ugly." "It already was," I replied. I slid one document across the counter. A formal occupancy agreement. Terms clearly outlined, duration, responsibilities, boundaries. Vanessa scanned the page quickly. Her expression hardened. "You expect us to sign this?" "Yes." "And if we don't?" "Then we discuss alternative living arrangements." The room fell silent. For the first time since they arrived, the power dynamic shifted visibly, not through shouting, not through drama, through paper. Vanessa set the document down carefully. "This is extreme," she said. "No," I replied. "This is structure." She stared at me for a long moment. Daniel looked between us, realizing something undeniable. They had underestimated me, and now the ground beneath them was no longer certain. Vanessa did not sign the occupancy agreement, not that day. She read it twice, lips thinning further with every paragraph. Daniel skimmed it, slower, absorbing the weight of each clause like someone testing ice beneath their feet. "This makes us tenants," Vanessa said finally. "You are," I replied evenly. "Guests with structure." "We're family." "Family doesn't require secret evaluations." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. "Mom." "The agreement outlines shared expenses," I continued calmly. "Utilities, groceries, duration of stay, privacy boundaries. No alteration of property without written consent. It protects all of us. It protects you, Vanessa snapped. Yes. Silence. She placed the document down as though it were something slightly contaminated. We need time. You have 48 hours, I said. Her eyes flashed. You can't impose deadlines. I can. It's my house. The words felt steady in my mouth now, not defensive, not angry, simply factual. That evening, something changed again. Not in tone, in tactics. I noticed first when my internet connection flickered, then disappeared entirely. I reset the router. Nothing. Daniel appeared in the hallway. We updated the Wi-Fi account, he said casually. Bundled it with our phones. More efficient. And the password? I asked. Vanessa answered from the living room. We'll manage the devices. Manage. I work from home occasionally, I said calmly. I need access. You don't work, Vanessa replied lightly. I held her gaze. Correction, I said. I manage my affairs. Daniel shifted. We'll give you the password. When? Soon. That night I checked something else, my landline, static. I picked up my mobile and dialed it. Disconnected. I stood in the quiet hallway, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the faint whir of the new mechanical recliner as Vanessa adjusted it in the living room. They were tightening control. Digital first. Subtle, but deliberate. The next morning, I did not confront them. Instead, I drove to the service provider's office. Yes, drove. My hands were steady on the steering wheel, my reflexes intact. The representative reviewed the account. It was transferred yesterday, she said. To whom? I asked. She hesitated. To a Daniel Hale. My son. Without my authorization? It appears he listed himself as primary resident. Primary resident. I am the homeowner, I said quietly. Restore the account immediately. Add a security flag. No changes without in-person verification. She complied. When I returned home, the router lights were blinking again. Vanessa stood in the kitchen when I entered. You went out, she said. Yes. You could have told us. I didn't realize I needed clearance. Her jaw clenched. Daniel came downstairs minutes later, phone in hand, staring at it. They reversed the transfer, he said slowly. Yes, I replied. You went to the provider. Yes. He looked at me, and for the first time there was no irritation, no dismissal, only recognition. You're not going to let this go, he said quietly. No, I answered. Vanessa stepped closer, lowering her voice. This is going to get very uncomfortable. It already is, I said calmly. She leaned in slightly. You think paper protects you, but families are complicated. And law is precise, I replied. The tension in the room was no longer hidden. It was visible, pulsing like heat above asphalt. That afternoon, an envelope arrived by courier. Not regular mail, courier, addressed to me. Inside was a printed notice from a financial advisory firm requesting confirmation of asset review discussions. I had never contacted them, but someone had. I walked into the living room where Vanessa sat scrolling through her phone. Did you contact Whitmore Financial? I asked. She didn't look up immediately. We were exploring options. Using my name? She finally met my eyes. We're trying to prevent chaos. No, I said quietly. You're trying to create leverage, Daniel stepped into the doorway. "Enough," he said, tension cracking in his voice. "Yes," I agreed. "Enough." I placed the courier letter on the coffee table. "Sign the occupancy agreement," I said calmly. "Or begin packing." Vanessa stood slowly. "You wouldn't evict your own son. Try me." The word hung in the air, not loud, not hysterical, certain. And for the first time since they arrived, I saw something shift in her posture. Not superiority, uncertainty. They did not sign. 48 hours passed in brittle silence. No shouting, no slammed doors. Just movement, measured, strategic. Vanessa stayed on her phone more often, stepping outside to take calls. Daniel lingered in rooms he used to move through quickly, as if trying to remember how things had been before this turned into a standoff. On the second evening, I noticed something missing. The metal lockbox. It had been in my closet that morning. By dinner, it was gone. I did not confront them immediately. I walked downstairs calmly and poured myself a glass of water. My pulse was steady, not panic, analysis. Vanessa stood near the sink. "Have you been in my room?" I asked. She didn't blink. "No." Daniel avoided looking at me. "The lockbox in my closet is missing," I continued evenly. Daniel's head snapped up. "What lockbox?" "The one containing my original deed." Silence. Vanessa's voice turned cool. "Why would we touch your things?" "Because you already have." Daniel shifted his weight. "Mom, maybe you misplaced it." I did not. The room felt smaller again, but this time the air was sharper. "I'm asking once," I said calmly. "Return it." Vanessa folded her arms. "We don't have it." There are moments when you feel the exact point of fracture. This was one. I nodded slowly. "Very well," I said. I walked to the hallway table, picked up my phone, and dialed Helen. I did not lower my voice. "Helen," I said clearly, "the original deed has been removed from my locked bedroom without my consent." Vanessa's posture stiffened. "Yes," I continued. "I would like to file documentation immediately, and I may need to involve law enforcement if it is not returned within 24 hours. Daniel's face drained of color. "Mom," he began. I raised a hand slightly, without looking at him. "Yes," I said into the phone. "I understand. Thank you." I ended the call. Vanessa stepped forward. "You're threatening police over a misunderstanding?" "Removing legal documents from a homeowner's locked room is not a misunderstanding," I replied. Daniel ran both hands through his hair. "This is insane." "No," I said quietly. "This is theft." The word landed heavier than any accusation before it. Vanessa's composure cracked. "You're overreacting. We were just reviewing things." "So you do have it." She froze. Daniel turned toward her slowly. "Vanessa?" She exhaled sharply. We needed to understand the full picture. "You could have asked," I said. "You would have said no?" She shot back. "Yes." Silence again. Daniel looked between us like a man standing between two closing walls. "Give it back," he said quietly to her. Vanessa hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. She walked upstairs without another word. Daniel remained where he was. "I didn't know she took it," he said. "You didn't stop her either," I replied. His shoulders slumped. A minute later, Vanessa returned. The metal lockbox was in her hands. She set it on the table harder than necessary. "You're destroying this family," she said coldly. "No," I answered calmly. "I'm protecting myself." Vanessa stared at me with something close to fury. "You think paper and threats will save you?" she said. "I think boundaries will," I replied. Daniel looked exhausted. "We just needed stability," he muttered. "You needed control," I corrected. The house was no longer pretending. The mask had slipped completely. And now, the next move would decide everything. Vanessa did not apologize for taking the lockbox. She didn't need to. Her silence was louder than any excuse. The following morning, I did something she wouldn't anticipate. I invited witnesses. Not loudly, not dramatically. At 11 a.m., Ruth arrived with her structured handbag and sharp eyes. At 11:15, Helen Carver walked through my front door in a navy blazer, carrying a slim leather briefcase. I had informed Daniel and Vanessa the night before that we would be clarifying household matters. Vanessa assumed it was posturing. It wasn't. We gathered in the living room, not in the den, not in the kitchen. In the center of the house, they had been trying to redesign around me. The gray mechanical recliner sat where my blue chair once had. I did not sit in it. I remained standing. Daniel looked uneasy. Vanessa looked irritated, but composed. Helen opened her briefcase calmly. "Mrs. Hale has requested a formal review of her current living situation," she began evenly. "Specifically regarding unauthorized financial inquiries, medical scheduling without consent, removal of legal documents, and attempted asset consultation under her name." Vanessa crossed her arms. "This is absurd." Helen did not look at her. "I'm speaking to facts." Ruth sat quietly beside me, observing. I stepped forward slightly. "I welcomed you into this home," I said to Daniel and Vanessa. "That welcome did not include legal maneuvering or attempts to redefine my competence." Daniel swallowed. Vanessa's expression hardened. "We were trying to protect you," she said. Listen carefully to that sentence. We were trying to protect you. How often is control disguised as care? If someone decided what was best for you without asking, would you call it love? Or something else? Tell me below. Helen slid several documents across the coffee table. "Effective immediately," she continued, "any further interference with Mrs. Hale's property, accounts, or medical autonomy will constitute documented harassment and potential financial exploitation under state law." The word exploitation shifted the air. Daniel looked at me sharply. "Mom, you're making us criminals." "I'm describing behavior," I replied. Vanessa leaned forward. "You can't evict family over misunderstandings." "I can terminate occupancy," Helen corrected smoothly. "Particularly when no lease exists and the homeowner feels threatened." Threatened. Daniel's composure cracked slightly. "We never threatened her." "You removed her deed from a locked room," Helen replied. Silence. Ruth finally spoke. "Margaret is sharper than most people I know. If anyone suggests otherwise publicly, I will testify." Vanessa's eyes flicked toward her, calculating. I placed one final document on the table. A formal notice of conditional occupancy termination. 30 days. Signed. Not yet filed. "You have a choice," I said calmly. "Sign the occupancy agreement today and abide by it, or begin preparing to leave within 30 days. Daniel looked at Vanessa. Vanessa looked at the papers. For the first time since this began, she wasn't calculating advantage. She was calculating loss. "You'd throw us out," she said quietly. "I will not be erased in my own home," I answered. The room fell still. Daniel lowered himself into the gray recliner without thinking. It lifted slightly under his weight, humming mechanically. The irony was not lost on me. Vanessa exhaled slowly. "We need to talk privately," she said to Daniel. "You can," I replied. "But the timeline stands." They stepped into the kitchen. Ruth squeezed my hand once. Firm. Helen leaned toward me. "You did the right thing." I nodded, but inside, I felt something else rising. Not relief. Resolve. Because 30 days is a long time for people who believe they are entitled. And I knew, standing there in the center of my house, that this was not over yet. The house felt different after that meeting. Not louder. Thinner, like the walls themselves were listening. Daniel avoided eye contact for most of the day. Vanessa did not. She moved through the rooms with deliberate calm, wiping counters that were already clean, adjusting cushions that no longer belonged to her vision. By evening, I received the first sign of their counterattack. A phone call. Not from them. From my sister-in-law, Elaine. "Margaret," she began cautiously, "Vanessa mentioned you've been overwhelmed lately." "Overwhelmed? I'm quite clear," I replied. "She said you might be pushing Daniel out over confusion." Confusion? There it was. The narrative had begun spreading. I kept my voice steady. "Elaine, were you told they removed my legal documents from a locked room?" A pause. "No." "Were you told they attempted to open credit in my name?" Another pause. "No." I thought not. By the time we hung up, I understood something critical. If they could not control me directly, they would control perception. That night I prepared. I drafted a short letter, not emotional, not defensive, outlining the facts. Unauthorized bank inquiry. Attempted medical scheduling without consent. Removal of deed. Legal response taken. Boundaries established. I printed copies. The next morning, I invited 2 more neighbors for coffee. Not gossip. Witness. We sat in the living room. I served proper coffee in porcelain cups, not the oversized ceramic mugs Vanessa preferred. I laid out the timeline clearly, with documents. No dramatics, just clarity. People listen differently when paper is present. By afternoon, something shifted. Vanessa returned from outside looking tighter than usual. "Did you speak to the neighbors?" she asked sharply. "Yes." "You're turning people against us." "I'm correcting misinformation." Daniel stepped into the hallway, tension visible now. "You didn't have to escalate publicly," he said. "I didn't," I replied. I clarified privately. Vanessa's composure cracked again. "You're humiliating us." "No," I said evenly. "Your actions are." Silence. Then came the final move I hadn't anticipated. A knock at the door. 2 representatives from Adult Protective Services. Polite, neutral. "We received a concern regarding your well-being," one of them said. Daniel stood frozen behind them. Vanessa's face was unreadable. I did not react. "Please," I said calmly, stepping aside. "Come in." They asked questions. Orientation, date, current events, medication, finances, living conditions. I answered every question clearly. I provided documentation. I handed them Helen's card. I described the unauthorized bank inquiry. I described the removed deed. I described the scheduled cognitive evaluation without consent. The representatives exchanged a look. They asked Daniel and Vanessa a few questions separately. The air in the hallway was thick. After 30 minutes, they stood to leave. "Mrs. Hale appears fully competent and aware of her affairs," one of them said professionally. "We see no indication of vulnerability at this time." Daniel looked down. Vanessa's jaw tightened visibly. As the door closed behind the representatives, silence flooded the house. I turned to them slowly. "You called them," I said. Vanessa didn't deny it. "We were concerned," she replied stiffly. "No," I corrected. "You were strategic." Daniel looked shaken now. Not angry, not defensive. Shaken. "You made it official," I said quietly. "You escalated it beyond family." Vanessa crossed her arms. "We had to ensure protection." "For whom?" I asked softly. No one answered. The power had shifted again. They had attempted the strongest card available, and it had failed. For the first time since this began, I saw fear in Vanessa's eyes. Not of me. Of consequences. After Adult Protective Services left, the house felt exposed, not fragile, revealed. Daniel stood in the hallway for a long moment, staring at nothing. Vanessa walked straight into the kitchen and began wiping the counter again, though it was already spotless. "You went too far," Daniel said finally, his voice low. I looked at him steadily. "I did not call them." He flinched. Vanessa spoke without turning around. "We needed documentation." "You have it now," I replied. Silence spread slowly through the house like ink in water. That evening, Daniel knocked on my bedroom door again. Not aggressively, not defensively. "Can we talk?" he asked. I let him in. He sat on the edge of my desk chair, shoulders heavy. "I didn't think it would go like this," he said quietly. "How did you think it would go?" I asked. He hesitated. "I thought we'd transition things gradually. You'd move somewhere smaller eventually. We'd refinance here. It would help all of us." There it was. The original plan, finally spoken plainly. "And my consent?" I asked. He didn't answer. "You decided the ending," I continued softly, without telling me. He looked up, and for a brief second I saw the boy he used to be. The one who cried when he scraped his knee. The one who asked before borrowing the car. "It got complicated," he said. "It got greedy," I replied. He didn't argue. The next morning, something changed. Vanessa did not wait 48 hours. She signed the occupancy agreement. Not gracefully, not willingly, but clearly. Daniel signed as well. I watched them both initial every clause. Duration, shared expenses, no alterations to property, no financial actions under my name, no medical decisions without written consent. 30 days remained on the termination notice, but now there were boundaries in ink. For a week, the house stabilized. No missing documents, no altered accounts, no quiet phone calls in the hallway. But tension remained. Vanessa moved carefully now, but not humbly. She watched me differently, less like an obstacle, more like a barrier she had misjudged. Then came the final fracture. On the 8th day after the APS visit, I received another call, this time from Helen. "They contacted a different advisory firm," she said calmly. "Attempted to inquire about property transfer structures. Not in your name, but asking hypothetical questions about elder homeowner transitions." I closed my eyes briefly. "They're still exploring angles," I said. "Yes," she replied. "Which means the intent hasn't changed." That evening, I called Daniel and Vanessa into the living room. No witnesses this time. Just us. "I've been informed you're still investigating transfer options," I said evenly. Daniel looked stunned. Vanessa did not. "We're planning for the future," she replied coolly. "The future does not include manipulation," I said. Daniel's voice cracked slightly. "Mom, we can't keep living like this." "You won't," I replied. Silence. I walked to the hallway table and picked up the notice of conditional occupancy termination. I placed it on the coffee table between us. I'm filing it tomorrow. Daniel stared at me. You're serious? Yes. Vanessa's voice turned sharp again. You'd rather live alone than have family? I'd rather live in peace than under strategy. The mechanical recliner hummed softly as Daniel shifted in it. It's 30 days, I continued calmly. Use them. Daniel's shoulders dropped. Vanessa looked at me for a long moment, something cold settling behind her eyes. You'll regret this, she said. No, I replied. I won't. Because regret requires doubt. And for the first time since they arrived, I had none. They moved out on the 27th day. Not 30, 27. Boxes appeared quietly in the hallway 3 days after I filed the termination notice with Helen. No speeches, no last-minute negotiations. Vanessa stopped pretending entirely. Daniel stopped trying to bridge the silence. On the final morning, I woke before them. The house was almost empty again. Their chrome coffee machine was gone. The minimalist beige runner disappeared from my table. Even the gray mechanical recliner had been disassembled and removed. They left the walls intact. I walked into the garage, and there, leaning against the far wall, wrapped loosely in a sheet, was my blue armchair, not donated. Hidden, I stood very still. They had planned to remove it quietly, to erase it without confrontation. But in the rush of departure, they forgot. Or perhaps Daniel hesitated. I don't know. I dragged it back inside myself. Slowly. Carefully. It felt heavier than before, not physically, but symbolically. I positioned it exactly where it had always stood, by the bay window where afternoon light gathers like warm honey. Dust clung to the fabric. One leg was scratched. I cleaned it with a damp cloth and sat down. No permission required. No schedule taped to the refrigerator. No whispers in the hallway. Silence. Real silence. Daniel knocked before they left. I opened the door. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, internally. We'll find somewhere else, he said. I hope you do, I replied. He hesitated. It wasn't supposed to become this. It did, I said calmly. Vanessa stood near the car, arms crossed, waiting. Daniel swallowed. You could have helped us. I would have, I said softly, if you had asked. He nodded once. No apologies, no dramatic reconciliation, just consequence. They drove away without looking back. The house exhaled. That afternoon, I made tea, Darjeeling, exactly at 6. I placed the kettle on my stove. My stove. I took my cup to the living room and sat in my chair. The familiar creak beneath me felt like recognition. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of boundaries. I am 77 years old, and I do not ask for much. Just peace. And I have it again. My dear friends, sometimes protecting your peace means standing alone in your own living room. Not everyone will agree with how Margaret handled this, and that's all right. Tell me honestly, would you have done the same? If this story meant something to you, like subscribe and share your thoughts below.